Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome to the Hope Architect podcast. I like to allow my guests to introduce themselves, and we can go from there.
Yes, my name is Indra and happy to be here today. And how do I introduce myself? I'm a wise old fool. And I spin on the spiritual path for more than 50 years. And I use astrology and the Enneagram to help people to wake up to who they really are, not who they think they are. My focus is on presence, living in the moment. It's kind of the cure all for anything because everything else is a temporary cure. And I kind of wondered what is a more permanent cure? Because the temporary cures are not very satisfying. They can be in the moment, but not in long term.
Yeah. And I know you have a background in Vedic astrology as well as Enneagram, you mentioned.
Yes, I saw you're an astrologer too. We do very different kinds of astrology.
Yeah, so I actually do something that I like to call astrogenetics. So I mix the two. There's lots of similarities that parallel there. But tell me a little bit about Vedic astrology, the insight that it gave you in the beginning of learning it, how it's changed your views and perspectives on life and the world.
Big question. When you said, I will answer that in just a second, but when you said you do them both together, which two are you talking about together?
Genetics and Vedic
Genetics.
astrology.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so epigenetics. Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, in a sense, it's very interesting because Enneagram is a little bit like genetics in its own way. It's different, but very similar. I started with astrology in the early 70s. And of course, it wasn't Vedic astrology then, it was Western astrology. But in the 90s, when I picked astrology back up, I was living in a spiritual community that was dedicated to India, and people were doing Vedic astrology. Vedic astrology is actually it's Indian astrology that got sanitized with a marketing name called Vedic astrology because when they started bringing it to the West in the 80s, the first said to be the first Indian astrologer to live in the U.S. was, I believe, 1980, Chakrapani, who lived in L.A. And so they found that it was like foreign. So they tried to warm it up a little bit with this term Vedic astrology, which is a little bit of a anachronism because I don't believe there's any astrology in the Vedas. Sure, there's mention of the planets, but these rules, a thousand rules, which is what astrology has come to be, none of that was in the Vedas. It's all made up of in modern times. It doesn't go really back that far. In fact, I like to refer to when I started, we were reading Dane Rudger, and Dane Rudger wrote a book in the 30s, um, the lunation cycle, the moon cycle. And in that book, it was the first time that anyone had ever, this is the folklore around it, that it was the first. So he talked about that you had the new moon, the first quarter, the full moon, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter, and then the new moon. And it was the first time that he ever talked about it as a cycle, because before that, the 1930s, it was always like first quarter was 90 degrees from new moon and full moon, but it wasn't as a cycle.
Right.
So that was like the 1930s. That's how old that is. And so the idea that all of these ideas we have being ancient are, I would use silly, but they're sophomoric at best. They're very new ideas that have been brought into the culture. The difference between Vedic astrology and a Western, I like to say the difference between them, that the Western astrologers don't agree with Western astrologers, and Vedic astrologers don't agree with Vedic astrologers. So if Vedic astrologers and Western astrologers don't agree, that's just part of astrology. So in Vedic astrology, we use the 12 signs. We don't use the outer planets. There are some that do, but I don't use the outer planets because I find them to be very slow and more generational than individual. And but the main difference, of course, is that we cast the chart slightly differently. That the Western astrology uses tropical validation. This is the relationship between the Earth and the Sun, and that is the seasons. And so March 21st is Aries zero every year. But in Vedic astrology, we take into account the Earth, the sun, and the sky behind the sun. And the sky behind the sun isn't the same every year. The whole solar system is on an orbiting in the Milky Way, called the precession of the equinox. It's a 26,000 year cycle, 25,800 year cycle. And so 1 degree is 72 years. That's 360 into 2580, 800. And so the two systems were, when they were discovered, were the same. And they didn't really matter. 400 AD, we're now 1600 years or 24 degrees different, which is confusing enough. But in 2 or 3 thousand years, we're going to be signs apart, and it's going to make no sense to anybody. What I like to say is that we are different when we're at work, when we're with parents, when we're with family, when we're with our buddies, when we're on a family trip. We dress differently. We have different personality, may use different language. There's a familiarity that we might do with different groups of people. And I find that the charts are just the same, that they are all parts of us, but they seem to reflect different ways. And I find that for my interest, which is spirituality, helping people to wake up to who they are, I find the Vedic chart to be particularly of interest because the Western chart, which is more, I'm going to call it personality oriented, it's more mundane oriented. And I find that the subtleties, like a fourth planet moves conjunct with your sun, or that your sun goes cuspy or whatever. I find that these subtleties may be, oh, that's interesting, but I find it to be, when we're talking about waking up, I find it to be rather important.
Absolutely. I actually started out with traditional astrology and looked at my sidereal chart and found that I identified a lot more because I'm someone who seeks after what is our purpose in life. Where is the soul headed? Where did we come from? And I find more of that when I look into Vedic astrology rather than tropical, kind of like what you were saying. I know I've read a portion of Indra's Net. I haven't gotten through all of it yet. So this is a book that you wrote kind of talking about the experience of life and just our human experience here. And I love that it's kind of shaped around the tarot. I'm not super familiar with tarot. My grandmother was a practitioner. So
Oh,
growing up, I watched her have clients come over and she would do these readings. So I was familiar with some of the sections and the themes. And throughout the book, you kind of talk about your stay in India. If you want to kind of talk about that a little more, especially where you stayed in the ashram, and kind of how that impacted your life and some of the wisdom that you gained, because what I also find interesting is I am someone who's always been very drawn to India, and I feel like there's so much wisdom and knowledge, especially if you've been able to experience the spiritual side of life there. So if you want to share a little bit of your experience and things that you learned there, and it's kind of
okay. So you give, I can see now you give big questions. Okay. So, okay.
So,
So, as you brought up the book, you don't have to know anything about the tarot. The idea was that I had these themes, which were these 500 to 1,000 or 1,200 word essays. I called them themes on different subjects. They were very spontaneous. They were written in India, and some of them are ancient teachings. Some of them are my experiences. Some of them are, what happened today. They're very sort of flow oriented, and some of them are experiences with clients and reflections on clients. And the book is very reflective. It's really interesting to find that it comes together. I had 40 themes and I tried to organize them into a book. I worked with a friend of mine, and so I came up with 4 subjects, and you put 10 themes into 4 subject areas. And my friend kind of did the same thing. But what I thought the first one was, I forget, she thought it was the second one. And what I thought was the second one, she thought was the first one. And um, it didn't have that flow I was wanting, and that's okay. But the book was written over 8 years, and I worked on it for a year and a half, and then I let it go for 4 years, and then I got back to it for 2.5 years. And when I got back to it, I had already had the idea that they were a little bit like tarot cards. The writings were a little bit like tarot cards, and then the idea came clear, which I sort of had envisioned it, but didn't realize that it was that they were actually tarot cards. And in 85 or 90 themes that I had written, I actually had one for each of the 78 tarot cards. Now, if you'd have asked me to write one for each of the 78 tarot cards, I probably would have never gotten it started. But because I didn't know what I was being asked to do, I was able to do it in 85 themes. I had one for each of the 78 cards. And when I applied what I had to the tarot cards, I found that 85% of them from the day that I matched them stayed the same. I only had maybe 10 or 12 of them change theme. That when I actually read the theme, I sort of based it on the title. Um, because I hadn't worked with it so much, I didn't remember what the themes were about. So when I actually got down to it, a few of them didn't work very well, and I had one big day when I changed 4 of them. I moved one to another card, and I moved another to another card, and then I took 2 of them, I took them out of the book, and I took 2 of the ones that weren't in the book into the book. That was my one big day of 4 moves. Other than that, it was basically 85% of what I had originally done was was what it ended up being, and the point was that the tarot cards gave them an order and a sense that I didn't know they had, and the book, while you can use it as a divination, you can use it as a resource, and you can just open it up. If you read it uh, cover to cover, it has a tremendous power, a tremendous flow. The tarot is 500 years old, and there's a wisdom in the order and the subjects and the way that it flows. And I use that. I call it pouring the book into a muffin tin. It shaped the book. It was a wisdom that was inherent in the tarot deck and in the flow of the nature of human life.
Absolutely. So you say about 85% of that kind of lined up naturally. That really speaks to our inner knowing. And I think something interesting about that, you had a story about being stuck in Thailand around the time of COVID. And
Right,
you walked your way to the airport because you were like, maybe I should get out of here, and it's like your mind was ready to go. You were ready to go. And it didn't
right.
quite work out that way for you. And by the time it did, all those airports were closed, but you were back home. And so I think kind of the main point in that story, you were showing how sometimes our mind is ready to go, but our soul kind of has this knowing. And it's funny how the circumstances that surround our life sometimes there's the synchronicity that allows us to go in the direction that maybe we were supposed to go, that our human mind or the ego or whatever it may be is fighting against. So would you talk a little bit about what you've learned from trusting your intuition and the inner knowing and just kind of those synchronicities, how they line up in life for you and what that means to you?
Yeah, so that particular story, so I had bought a ticket to come back on March 15th, uh, 6, 8 months before. I had picked March 15th because it's my grandson's birthday, and it turns out that March 15th was the day well, March 16th was the day that both, Bangkok Airport and San Francisco Airport closed. So I got out on the last day. Maybe they went the 16th, but they didn't go the 17th.
Yeah.
So, I was learning to trust the instincts, my intuition, and I had been working on growing intuition. That was part of the story. I'd been working with a group here in India here and then in Thailand, uh, to develop intuition, and so that was a full circle story. But what I like to say, I don't know if it's in that particular story, but it's definitely someplace in the book. I experienced, 20 years ago now, I was doing a lot of foreign travel. I was a, importer. I was buying, spiritual items and bringing them back to the US. I did that for 12 years and enabled me to travel all over the world. And, I would get to a place, I would buy tickets ahead of time. I had to plan, and I learned that in a new country or a new city, I would take about 4 or 5 nights, and in that time, I could check out enough, and, if I wanted to go further, then I would do it the next time because I wanted to set up everything ahead of time. So sometimes I would have extra time. I didn't necessarily not have enough time, but I had things that I may wanna do the next time, but I might have extra time, and so I had this experience. I particularly remember, I think I was in, Cambodia, Phnom Penh, I think that's the name, yeah, Phnom Penh. I think I was there, and so I had extra time, whether I had a day or I had a half a day or whatever, and it was like, "What do I wanna do? Okay, what am I gonna do?" You know, because I had my thing kind of planned out, so do I wanna go back to the room and go to sleep? Do I wanna go down to the river? Do I wanna go to a museum? Do I wanna go eat or have a tea? And so I started the process of feeling, just sitting there, that it wasn't that I couldn't figure it out with my head, that if we make decisions, and since this time, I'm gonna get through my experience in just a minute, but since this time, I don't make any decisions with my head, I make them all with my gut. I do the same process. And so the process was for me to sit there and to just feel, what is it that I wanted to do? Did I want to, and the thing is, did I want to go to a museum? Did I want to go to the river, sightsee? Did I want to take a walk? Did I want to sleep? And, they're all good solutions, but which one was the right one for this time? Because tomorrow, the solution might have been different, and so what I learned to do is just to sit there until I felt a rightness within myself that whichever one was the one that I wanted to do, and so since that time, I don't make any decisions with my head, it's all in with my intuition. Now this experience, with COVID was, of course, later, and I was learning to more instinctively to feel the intuition, and we had a practice, actually, similar practice. They would suggest that we sit there and figure out where we should go eat and what we should go eat, where and what, and feel it rather than make a decision that I feel like, Mexican tonight, so I'm gonna go to so and so, they wanted us to experience the feeling of it, and I was working with somebody else, and so we both had to feel it. And you could spend a half hour, an hour waiting to find some unity on that. And so the process was that my personality, I was gonna say my spirit, but not my eternal spirit, but the spirit in me wanted to move because in Thailand, and I was in, Chiang Mai, and because of the unknown, my nature was to move. I wanted to go to intuition, but because I was so stirred up, because COVID was starting to happen, but it wasn't very big in Thailand, so it wasn't the issue. But then I thought, well, maybe I should leave early. So I went to the ticket department. I didn't go to the airport, but I went to their office, and they wanted $100 to change a ticket then. And I said, well, no, I don't think so. So I ended up doing nothing. I thought about going to a beach place that I had been many, many times. I thought about going there, and then I ended up not moving, and what ended up happening is that a Chinese doctor, she had some herbs that she thought would help with COVID, so I took those herbs, and then I waited, and I ended up having the flight that was one of the last out of Bangkok. I went to Bangkok a couple of days early and was ready for the flight, and so it worked out perfectly, as things do, that we stir things up and then they don't work out so perfect. But intuition to me is to not use the mind, is to not to try to figure out, because we're not happy. With the intuition, there's no wrong answer, and whether I wanted to sleep or eat or walk, it didn't really matter. But if I try to figure it out, then we always second guess, and we say, "Well, we should have, it would have been better," but, that isn't our reality, and we have to learn to not only feel and experience the intuition, but we also have to learn to trust it, because quite often, as I was saying before about the book, I had an awareness that it was a little bit connected to tarot, but I wasn't really, when that came up, I wasn't ready to see it in its, totality, that that was actually the structure of the book.
Yeah.
And that's okay, that it wasn't as well formed then. By the time that it came up, uh, it was very easy for me to flow with that.
Don't mind me, I'm taking notes because I get so many questions and I don't want to forget what I was going to ask.
Yes. Well, I'm giving you long answers to big questions, so
No problem. They're great answers. I really appreciate you doing this and talking with you. One of the other things that you reminded me of as you were speaking, and it kind of ties back to intuition because I do want to get to that, but you speak about staying present and also allowing things to unfold naturally. This is something that I've had to work on. I'm a big believer in kind of progress over perfection because it's like you said in the book, things have to, you have to at least start, and we may not always have control over how everything unfolds, but it's going to unfold. I mean, it's inevitable. And so you have a moment in the book where you talk about sitting still in the midst of action, whether you're at work, whether you're at a park. I think you even referenced a childhood park that you had gone to.
yes, I
Yeah.
remember, yeah.
And so in moments where it's, even if there's chaos around you, just taking a second and say, I'm going to sit here for a minute. Maybe I'll rest my head back. And you just take those 2 minutes and kind of be still. And then when you come back, it's almost like you feel more alive because you see everything going around you again. I don't know if I'm articulating that in the way that you wrote it, but I want to get to how that ties into allowing things to unfold and kind of back into trusting our intuition.
Let's see. You give me big thoughts. You know, I had a teacher once, and I called him the most esoteric teacher I've ever had. And I would say, "Well, how do you know that?" And he would say, "Experience."
Okay.
And so the thing is that when we slow things down, then we can get a clearer focus on what's really happening. And I feel to give you this, let's keep it big, okay? So let me give you one of my main teachings, okay? I have a thing called the four doorways to conscious living. It's not in the book. It's actually going to be the next book, and I was writing about this morning. The creating distance between our movie and our observation. Okay. So the four doorways to conscious living, we have to learn to observe. We have to learn to watch our thinking. We have to learn to watch our reaction to other people's thinking. We need to learn to watch our reactions to situations. We need to learn to watch our reactions to other people's reactions to situations. We need to get out of the movie of our life into the audience to create some objectivity, to slow things down in order to have a clarity about whatever is happening. It's really easy to be clear about what Sally needs to do,
Yeah.
but it's not so easy to know what Indra needs to do. And in order to do that, we have to learn to observe. Then the second doorway is to let go and release what doesn't serve us. Letting go involves being aware of a feeling, so we have to be aware of our feelings. We have to let them come up, stay with it, and let it run its course. And this is the key without wanting to make it different or do anything about it. It's just a feeling, it's not fact. It means simply to let the feeling be there and to focus on letting out the energy behind it. When letting go, ignore all thoughts. And this is the hardest one because because releasing is never ending. Then we have to learn to love ourselves. That's the third doorway. And then we learn to live in the moment. So if we're in the moment, then we learn to love ourselves. How do we love ourselves? By letting go and releasing whatever doesn't serve us. Now, if eating ice cream serves you right now, then keep eating ice cream. But there are many things that we are doing that are not serving us, and it isn't very hard to figure out what some of them are. We need to put energy into letting them go in order to learn to be present. How do we know what to let go? we learn to observe. Life will tell us what it is that we need to observe.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think when we're looking for an answer or a solution, you first have to become aware, and you can't be aware without having that observation, right? So you make a great point there. And I think too, I really like how you say releasing and letting go, because again, as you say, that is a hard thing for a lot of us to do. It kind of reminds me of something I had to learn because I used to be very angry. Someone who had lots of anger, believe it or not, just because of circumstances of life and things. And I found that sometimes it just takes sitting with our emotions, knowing that it's going to come to an end. It's like a wave that goes over us. And then we can act, because a lot of times, if we act in that moment, it becomes very impulsive. We don't have the time to think things through. And so being able to let go, observing first, gives us the ability to live consciously.
Yeah, so there are a lot of levels to releasing. There's some levels that we can achieve right away. But how many times have we said, "Oh, I didn't know that my ex-mate still triggered me," you know? Because there's more levels there or experiences that they can still trigger us, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But releasing is, boy, on each level, each maturity level we reach, there's another level of releasing experiences that we already thought we released or feelings that we already thought we released. There's nothing wrong with that, but that just seems to be the human situation,
Yeah.
human condition.
And speaking of more than one, when you're talking about the levels and things, back to intuition. When you say that your intuition is never wrong, um, can you elaborate on why? Because I believe that's true as well. But what if your intuition is A and mine is B? They're both right, because we're all in different paths. This is my understanding. We're all in different paths to something that is a collective working. So when you say your intuition is always right, but our intuitions differ, how can you speak to that in terms of the paths that we're on in life and how it all comes together as a whole?
Well, I don't think I said it's always right. I
Okay.
said it's never wrong.
Never wrong. Okay. Okay. Explain the difference there.
Yeah, the difference is, yeah, the subtle the difference
Oh,
is
what
a
is it?
subtlety, but the idea that it's what I felt, you know. Okay, so it wasn't a good relationship, but I didn't know, but now that I've had it, now I really know that. And so the experience, do I want that experience again? No, I don't. But that doesn't mean that doing it was the wrong thing.
Right. Okay. Because
But it doesn't mean it was the right thing to have the experience. It just means that it was not the wrong thing to have the experience because next time you'll know, you'll have more clarity about a situation.
right, because
And maybe I'm using semantics, but I think it's a different energy because I don't need to be right or wrong. It's not about being right or wrong. It's not about, I don't believe in good or bad. There's nothing right or wrong. There's nothing good or bad. If I could have done better, I would have done better. So I want to let go of those whole ideas, but the idea that it's not wrong is objective to say that it was what my intuition told, what I felt in my intuition. If you felt it in your head, now I had a friend one time tell me, "Well, I feel it in my heart," and I said, "Well, great. Now is that the heart that's connected to the head, or and the wants, or is that a heart connected to the gut and your intuition?" And that's what you have. That's a distinction you have to feel. But if you feel it in your gut, then it's not wrong. It doesn't make it right. It just makes that you need to do that. You want to go to that restaurant. You want to see that movie. You want to try that relationship. You want to buy an outfit that's questionable. But at least then afterwards. If you do it, then you learn from it. So it's not wrong, but it's not about being right or wrong. It's just about the intuition. I think what you want to get to is that the intuition is a higher self. that it's a eternal part, whether it's God's voice or whether it's ourself. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because we are God, and so the ultimately they're indistinguishable. But it's an energy that's beyond our potato chip reality, sitting there eating potato chips. It's beyond that, It's a higher vibration, and so it doesn't mean that we chose the best thing for us long term, but it can be that we needed that experience. And so it's not wrong, but it doesn't make it right in the sense it's correct in the sense that um I felt to do it, but it's not correct in the sense that that it was the right thing for me to do long term, but it was not wrong for me to do it because I learned what I needed to learn.
Yeah. I
This is very subtle and it's a lot of semantics, but it really it's a magnetism. It gets you magnetized in the right way rather than thinking that I'm always that things have to be right and I'm always right. It gets us a little bit more arrogant and it lightens up our egotistical side rather than our conscious humility, open side.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think you mentioned too in the book living in the gray. And to an extent, I think that's present there because you can, there's a book I read recently by Dr. Somov called Shitty Best. Best.
Best, BEST.
Uh-huh. And it talks
Okay.
about how in every moment we're doing our shitty best. And he refers to it in that language because he's saying, if you knew better in that present moment, did you do the best you could? Well, yes, because in that present moment, you didn't know better yet. And so, kind of like what you're saying, did we always make the right decision? Well, you can call it a mistake, but you can't say, had I known that, I wouldn't have done it in that moment because you were still in that moment, if that makes sense. And so I think that it's necessary that, yes, we follow our intuition. And if for some reason things don't turn out the way that we wanted, we know for the next time, I think is kind of what ties into what you were just mentioning as well.
Yeah, see, I
Um,
want to get out of decision. That's your head.
yeah,
I want to get into it's what I felt.
yeah,
I don't care what you think. I care what do you feel.
yeah.
I
Okay.
don't trust the thinking. I don't listen to it and I don't trust it. And I suggest to my clients not to get into that. We want to get into the feelings. Everybody's capable of doing that, but everybody's not capable of trusting it yet.
What do you think blocks people's, or what do you think gets in the way that people have this fear of trusting their intuition? Because that's a very common thing.
Well, I think it's experience. I think that it's distractions. I think it's ego. It's insecurities. It's fears. It's anger. It's what will happen if I do it wrong? It's hearing a parent's voice in your head. That oh you're going to do it the wrong way. So it's life. That this is why we're here is to learn to be able to trust the intuition, to feel the intuition, and then to trust it. People can be incredibly good at having their intuition, but not trusting it.
Yeah. What would you advise to someone who is practicing to kind of decondition themselves to again to start trusting it? Because we've been so conditioned to just
Yeah. Well, I think it's you have to learn to observe. You have to learn to observe that you're not trusting your intuition, that you're feeling it, but yet you don't trust it. So what happens is that you don't trust it, and then you find out that it was right. I shouldn't go out on the date. Everybody understands these relationship stories, so I bring it out. I use it as a fail-safe here. It's not about you or me, it's just that everybody understands this. So, when you I knew it wasn't the right person, but you do something that you don't wanna do again, and then you realize, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and you do it again, but eventually you learn you don't wanna do it. This is called growing up. This is maturing, and that is the process. There's no shortcut on it, and so we have to observe that we're doing it. We start to feel that it's a pattern, and maybe our friends start with, "Hey, I've heard this story from you before." "Oh, yeah, I didn't recognize it as a story."
Yeah. Um, And then also too, I want to jump back a little bit to astrology and how you talked about the human Enneagram. I'm not as familiar with Enneagram. I know a little bit about it. Um, what do you see between the two as they relate? And then especially in terms of free will, because a lot of people feel um, that those of us who practice astrology feel like it's fate and that we don't have free will.
Fate versus free will is an incredible story that they started about it 1800 BC. And I don't really believe any of it. It's really a chicken versus an egg type of situation. I don't think there's any way to not get the egg yolk on you when you start to play with this. So um, we have free will, but we don't have complete free will. I mean, we have the choice. I read a book one time. A very wise man said that at birth, the time of death is fixed, but the method is up to us. So the problem with fate versus free will is that as soon as we get into that conundrum, we give our power away. We're powerless because we're stuck, whether it's fate or free will, we're stuck. So the idea here is that I can choose what to have for breakfast, but I'm probably going to choose the same thing I've had 28 out of the last 30 days, but still I have the freedom to choose today. And so the idea is I'd rather let go of the fate versus free will discussion, because when you do it at that level, you're not free. You're stuck in an incredible amount of preconceived ideas that are not freeing. And so the idea here is that it really doesn't matter. That it's not my will I'm doing anyways. I'm doing spirit's will. That it's the book was written through me, not from me, and that I am God, and that all is divinity. And so the fact is that if I'm concerned with Indra, then I'm going to suffer. I'm going to feel pain. I'm not going to know right from wrong. I'm going to make stupid choices, bad choices, and I don't find anything good comes from that. So over the years, I have learned to let go, needing a choice about anything. I had a friend of mine who's almost my age, a wise man who has wisdom, who's written quite a few books over the years and was a spiritual teacher. He's writing a book on relationships, and he put out in a post something like, "What's your highest expectation in relationship?" There was no place to comment, but the highest is to let go of all expectations. I let go of all expectation. Don't have an expectation about anything. My wife and I have the best relationship because there is no expectation about anything. We do everything out of love and joy, not out of expectation.
Yeah. And so, in terms of not looking at fate and free will, would you say the answer is staying present? Just staying in the present moment? Does that keep you from?
The answer is always staying present, whatever the question is.
There you go. Yeah. I see the truth in that.
Or be it not staying present, but being present.
Being present.
Staying present. I had another teacher who was very meticulous with language. Staying present is a state, and that's conscious. That's not conscious living. Yeah, that's mental. Yeah. So we would rather have to be in the state. So you're just being present. It's just moment to moment. But the conscious, I'm going to stay present. I'm going to stay present. That's not it. That's not staying present. That's staying present with staying present. That's not being present.
Okay. Yeah. And so when you because you were mentioning working with clients, what do you find is the number one thing that people are running into issues with when it comes to their search for truth or peace or whatever it is that they're looking for? What do you see the most?
Well, that's what the 78 themes in the book, it's
All of
like
it.
most, yeah, all of it. Most is not loving themselves. That's the cure all. That's the third loving yourself. You can't love anybody until you love yourself. You can't really love anybody. You can love the idea of loving somebody, but you can't really love anybody until you love yourself, until you've learned what love is. And whether it be being getting angry or being unworthy or being insecure, everybody has Almost everybody has all of those to some degree. Some people have them, some of them more than others, but the rainbow of them, everybody has.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating that that's such a common struggle because um I went through some traumatic things some years back and I came to realize that a lot of my issues were because I didn't know how to love myself. And when I found that that was the answer, I had no idea where to begin. What does that mean? And it felt very cliche, like, oh, you're supposed to love yourself. And so I think that can be an obstacle for many people. Um, and it's like you said, it's about finding that you are worthy and finding that you do deserve things and, you're not exactly the things that happen to you or all of that. So I think that's
All of 'em. All of 'em, and it's a Santa's bag, it's got a lot of gifts in it. It's just full of it's all of them. It's all of them at once, and you can't juggle them. I mean, it's nice to stay conscious of and you need to, on one level, stay conscious of that I get insecure, that I get shy. But the solution is you have to let go of trying to stay conscious of it and just be it rather than try to be it. You need to just be it, and what does it take? It takes experience. It takes enough falling down that you're able to get up and walk that truth without feeling criticized and feeling judged or judging yourself or feeling uh I'm a failure, I'm doomed, whatever they are. It's all of those. You've given me a bunch of questions that I haven't answered, so I'll get back to India. The Enneagram and astrology, um, I'm probably the world's expert in this because nobody has really picked it up. I think that it's actually an incredible teaching, and I don't have a problem. 25 years in, I don't really have a problem that nobody thinks that it's a solution, and that's okay, that isn't really a problem for me. But the Enneagram it's not a Greek teaching, but the name is Greek and it means nine-sided figure. And there's a geometric shape connected with the Enneagram, which we don't have to go into, which is a combination of three different geometric shapes: a circle, a triangle, and a thing called a hexag that has 6 points. And this creates a shape that has 9 points, and you could put anything at the points, but the Enneagram of personality, which is what we're talking about, has there are nine personality types. And on the simplest of levels, it's a personality typing system. But at the deepest of levels, there are nine personality types. And the reason it's so strong is because the patterning of each type. People say to me, "Well, how do you know me so well?" Well, I know that I don't know you particularly well, but I know the Enneagram well, and once we figure out what is the core story, then, the perfectionist being one of them, and, then, then the patterning is clear, and the patterning isn't necessarily 100%, but it's damn close that these are the core stories. And so I like to say that psychology doesn't really have an end game. They just observe behavior, but spiritually, the end game is to live in the moment, and the Enneagram will give us our core triggers, which will then help us to be able to get back to the moment. And in the moment, nothing touches us.
yeah. How do you feel when it comes to Vedic astrology in terms of looking at the individual? And as far as because we're not looking at personality there, but you can layer that to look at kind of do you look at it as
So
parents?
there was a I'm pulling out all my tricks here. So besides studying Dane Rudger in the 70s, we also read this man named um, Mark Edmund Jones. And Mark Edmund Jones had a theory that he called the worldview. And this was in the third again in the 30s. And so he said that he starts by looking at the shape of the chart, and he could pick up 7 patterns, and these were very popular at the time with people of my generation. Splay, which means that there was no general shape. He would call it bucket, which was a lot of planets on one side and like 1 or 2 planets on the other side, the handle to the bucket. And there was one with 3 sides, kind of 3 grouping of planets. And so he said you could start to analyze a chart by figuring out the general shape of the chart, and it became a personality structure. Now, the Enneagram goes whole hog into that with 9 personality types. So I'm gonna work with somebody, next week, give a reading to somebody next week, and I looked at his chart yesterday, and he's a 2, the helper. So there are 3 core instincts. There's anger, emotion, and fear. And while we have all 3 of them in us, one of them is at our core. One is our core triggering. So the anger types are 8, 9, and 1. The Enneagrams are numbered. They also have names, but of course we don't agree on the names, but they have numbers. There's no hierarchy. 8 isn't better than 4. They're numbered 1 through 9. So 8, 9, and 1s are the anger types. 5, 6, and 7 are the mental types with fear at the core, and 2, 3, and 4 are the emotion types. At 9, 11, the angry types got angry, the fear types got afraid, and the emotion or image types thought that they had caused it. And so when you look at the dignity of the planets in his Vedic chart, dignity is the strength of the planets based on the sign that they're in, which I think is the most important thing in a chart, and it's like completely been let go. It's like, uh, an asteroid is more important to people than their dignity. I don't get it,
Yeah.
okay? But the dignity, what's the one planet that he has terrible dignity? It's Venus. And so it's all judging. This is the core trigger. He's got a strong Mars, which is a 2 because they're the helper they like to do. He's got a strong but not as strong moon, and so he's emotional and sensitive. That's the 2. And he has a weak sun in strength because he has low self-esteem. That's the 2. That's pride and shame. And so there his sun and his moon are conjunct his south node in the 4th house with Venus, his debilitated his great enemy Venus. It's Venus in Cancer. He's Cancer, so he's emotionally based, and the Venus is a great enemy in Cancer, and so he judges everything. And so he knows the Enneagram. I met him through the Enneagram world, and to be able to show him that if he would stop judging, then he'd have more self-esteem. You understand? Planets conjunct, and help me here because I know you understand, but for your audience, I don't want to talk over anybody's head. But planets conjunct go up together and go down together, and so he can feel okay about himself. He can be sensitive rather than emotional. He can try to be in his wisdom, K2 South Node on the high side, but then he feels insecure and he starts judging and comparing, and the other of them go to the low side.
Yeah. Yeah, because
And then he loses 4th house. He loses his grounding in himself.
yeah. So when you talk about because you're mentioning the conjunct planets going up together, going down together, I like to think that there's obviously, and we know this based on placements, but outside of placements, you can still work with the planets to have the higher expression, or what I would call the lower expression, is how I like to think about it. Um, so just because, say, you have like a Sun Neptune conjunction, it doesn't mean that you're going to be delusional or this and that. You can work it to your advantage no matter what the placements might be. And I think that's kind of what that shows too, especially.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So the thing is that it's when you get into the, oh my God, it's a Sun Neptune conjunction, that is the disempowering because divinity is not that way.
Yeah.
The meek shall inherit the earth. I mean, it's not that way. The reality is that you have the free will to have the choice. We don't have complete free will that we're in the body and that we can go out of our body. We can go out of our body with fear. You can astral project out of your body, but the reality of it is you're kind of still in the body into the last breath. And so the reality of it is that it has a high side and a low side, and it's your choice as to which one you want to live. The reality of it is that is going to be a grounding in himself is going to be a problem because 4 planets in the 4th house, that is a major center of energy. There is no 2 ways around that, but how someone handles that is their choice, and it's a learned experience. It's learned to see it on its low side, and you can just as easily learn to see it on its high side. This is the experience, is to observe that when he, in this particular situation, starts judging and comparing,
Yeah.
blaming, self-righteous, that the rest of it goes to shit.
Yeah. because it's that awareness again. If you don't have it, then you're not going to be able to make that choice to go, do I want the higher expression, the lower expression? Because there's no awareness. And that's why I've always felt like, whether it be astrology, the Enneagram, having something that can give you knowledge of self or self knowledge will lead you to be able to have that awareness. And that requires the observation that you talk about. And once we do that, then in those moments, we can kind of act out our karma so that we can make the choices to not be tied into what people look at as the fate or whatever it may be.
Absolutely, and that is maturity that takes a while to realize that they're all connected because for me, they're not those are not all connected, and for you, they're probably not all connected, but if you've got 4 planets conjunct, they are
Oh,
for a
yeah.
person who has that chart, they are those energies are connected,
Yeah.
and the mind wants a set rule.
Mm.
I like to say in India, there's only one rule. The one rule is there are no rules.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the truth of it. Absolutely. And then you mentioned a book.
Well, that's the internet.
Where can anyone find that one?
It's on Amazon. You can order it through your favorite bookstore if you want. InteresNet, A Seeker's Guide to the Human Experience. Each theme has many aspects to it. There's a color photograph and a caption. Did you like those? Did you?
I did. I loved the questions at the bottom, how you associate with a planet and the characteristics. I really like that setup.
Okay, so there's a color photograph for each card, and they can be a little obtuse. I did a podcast, I think 2 days ago, and I remember her saying that the book was very reflective.
Yes.
The book made her reflect a lot on herself, and so that's what the photograph is meant to do, and you have no idea what's coming. You haven't read the theme yet, it's just the photograph, and then the captions relate to the photograph, but the captions are written to not need the photograph. They can be a little bit non sequitur, but they also make you think, and they're an introduction to the theme, but you don't have really any idea where you're going yet. Some of them may be clearer, but they also are a little bit open-ended and okay. So then we have the theme, and they're 500 to 1,200 words that I expressed, and they have a very similar energy. This is my energy that they have a flow from kind of stating a problem and then kind of getting bigger with the problem and then, oh my God, and then kind of getting to sort of the positive and then making it bigger and bigger. And by the end, it all kind of pulls together and it ends with the beginning. I can't think of one at the moment, but whatever the title begins with, it kind of ends at that same place.
Okay, yeah. I'm about a third of the way through, so I'm excited to get through the whole thing. Very eye-opening. Lots of wisdom in there.
So
Yeah.
then after the theme, then there are, I think there are 9 different parts, and this part I call leveling up. There's significance, which has about 12 terms as to what we're dealing with here, security or experiences or different terms to get an idea of the significance of the theme. And then there's the lesson. And this is where we pull the card and the story together and kind of express it in a clear, that part is very clear what the lesson is and what we're working on. And then there's the exercises. So there's 3 exercises for pretty much each of them, and they're very open-ended. Think about it and suggest and, go meditate by water or have you ever or, those kind of ideas. And then there's the next step, a suggestion for the next step. Then the contemplate, kind of a meditation, something to meditate on. The higher octave to take it to the lesson to its higher vibration, and then the affirmation,
Yeah.
which I always felt that the affirmation kind of cements it all together in 8 words.
Yeah, I really like the affirmations at the end, specifically the ones that you wrote, because affirmations are very, they can be very general sometimes, and I felt like these were perfectly worded, that they resonated really well with the story, and it was a good closing for each one that I've come across so far. So, I just really like the prompts and everything that are in there following each theme. Yeah, it really makes you think.
So the idea is, that you can open the book, you can read it however you want, that you can just open the book and you can have a question and open the book. You can pull a tarot card if you like to do that and open the book. But if you go cover to cover, then it becomes kind of like a workbook. And what people have told me, um, I call them serious people who are really working with the book is that they go slow, that they like one a day, like maybe, maybe two a day if you feel really strong, or maybe one every 2 days, but you really think about it. And by the time you get to the end, you didn't realize that because you can read it on any level. You can read it as a I don't know anything and I'm not spiritual, and I think you can enjoy it at that level just as a story. But if you get into it and it starts vibing with you and you go to the exercises and you think, "Whoa," I know when I was editing it, by the time I got to the end, I would have to go back to the beginning again, and because I would kind of forget what it was about, and because it's a permanent energy, the centrifugal,
Like
it keeps looping.
it's cyclical.
By the time you get to the end, you're on a deeper level. So then you want to go back to the beginning to read it again because you can now you know what it's about. Then you can read it at a deeper level. And when you get to the end, you go, "Oh, whoa! I didn't see that. Let me try it again." I know for me it was that way, and they came through me. I wrote them; they were my experiences. But believe me, when I put them with the tarot card, I understood things about the themes that I didn't understand before. I didn't understand the full extension of what they were about when they
Enjoy.
were written.
Yeah, I really enjoy it because even as you start to read, you're okay, maybe you're into the first, second paragraph and you think, oh, I know where this is headed and so forth. I've kind of experienced something a little bit like this. And then as you continue to read, it's like, oh, like there's even more profound wisdom than I would have imagined here. Even if I was kind of in the same direction of the topic, my mind is going that way. And so I found there was a lot of insight and wisdom there that I found really helpful. So.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that, and I want to tell people what comes to me is it's not hard to read. The wording is simple, and it's not while the concepts may be deep, that the wording it's a simple writing. It's not big words and things are explained, but the depth of the experience and the depth that's intended, the subtleties are in a sense never ending. That I don't believe that it will take a while to really get to the end of all of what's in them because they have like the Bible, like, not to say that it's the Bible, but it's a book that people might know that you might get more out of it than just the words.
Yeah, every time you read it. Well, I definitely appreciate you writing the book, and it's called Indra's Net: A Seeker's Guide to the Human Experience. And do you have anything else you'd like to plug?
Well, I offer these readings. I have a website, indrarinzler.com. It's all one word, and you can read about the readings. The readings are also very deep. I record them for people, and you can listen to the recording in 5 years and hear things that you've never heard before. It might, in 10 or 15 years, some of it might be outdated because you're way past those teachings and experiences. We need another reading in order to find out what's current, but I can guarantee that you don't get it all out on the first listening. And I loved when somebody wrote me 3 and 6 years later and said, "You know what? You were right." And not to be right, but just that they're still hanging with it, and able to see that. So the readings are beautiful. The astrology. I do location astrology. I work with the Enneagram. I have a teaching that you would really love called the Wheel of Totality that came to me. It's our blind spots. It's the empty houses.
Oh,
People don't talk about empty houses,
yeah.
but
Interesting.
empty houses contain awareness. It's what we don't understand. So I share that teaching that was given to me by Spirit about 10 or 12 years ago in the readings, and family dynamics, relationship readings are wonderful. So people can contact me there. And I like to give two free offers to your listeners. One is that I will send you your Vedic astrology chart. You need to write me at Indra Rinzler, all one word, at gmail.com. Give me your date, time, and place of birth, and I will send you your astrology chart. It's not a free reading, but I will make a comment or two. And if you would like to learn about what is your Enneagram number, I have a free test that I will send you. It's 5 or 10 minutes to take the test. It may or may not give you your number because you may or may not be easy. It's not for
Yeah.
some people, it's not easy to figure out, but it will start honing you in on some directions, and it will, give you some things to think about. That's also free. Just write me at indrarinzler@gmail.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. I really enjoyed talking to you and having you share your wisdom.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.